All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Tim Siglin. I'm a co-founder of Brain Trust Digital and actually a contributing editor with Streaming Media Magazine, streamingmedia.com, Streaming Media Global. Today we're going to talk about how to leverage corporate tubes for maximum return on investment. And I'd like to have each of the presenters, starting with Igor, introduce themselves, tell us just very briefly about their company, and then we're going to go through a series of questions as a panel, and we're going to turn off the projector so that Igor doesn't have to keep staring into the light.
So if I actually look here, I can actually see the audience outside just about. So I might not look 100% comfortable, but it's not going to last. So my name is Igor Murphy, and I head up what's referred to as our digital events at a company called Intercall. Intercall is the biggest worldwide conferencing company, and we have a business line or a business entity which is dedicated to events. So a lot of that's providing audio events through to corporate clients, but associated to that for about 15 years now is what we'd refer to as webcasts, or doing live communication over the web, audio webcasts and increasingly video webcasts. And then linked to this video content that we're creating, we've been looking to provide solutions which are around video management for our corporate clients. And one of the partners we work with is Kaltura, who Russ will explain is about. But corporate tubes is one of the solutions which Intercall positions to those clients. Over to Rob.
Hi, Rob Price, and I'm from Atos, where my role is Head of Digital. Atos, global IT services business, 80,000 people across the globe. I'm probably here in a number of different capacities. So some of you may be familiar with our Zero Email Ambition program, which has led over the last 3 years in terms of changing the way that we work, changing the way our employees communicate, collaborate across the organisation. And part of that is ranges of technologies, which includes video content as well, but actually it's more around the culture change and the adoption and actually measuring the benefit from that global change program. We've got a global cloud business called Canopy. So another capacity I guess I'm here in is recognising that vertical combination of tools and technologies, specifically for certain verticals like, for example, media, is a core focus for us, and we too work with Kaltura in that regard in terms of working with our media clients across the globe. And probably finally, innovation and change and understanding the impact of digital in disrupting not only our organisation but our clients' organisations is a key aspect to that. We have a community called the Scientific Community. It's a global virtual think tank, and a lot of the things that we do in terms of evolving the way that we work emerge out of that. Zero Email came out of that. We produced a white paper a couple of years ago in terms of video in the enterprise and understanding how organisations are adopting that and the lessons that could be learnt there. And really getting that thought leadership out to the world, for example, using blogging and social media, again, using video as well as written is a key part of what we do. Russ?
Great. Thanks, Rob. You hear that? Zero email. Atos has an initiative for that, so I think it's pretty awesome. My name is Zack. I'm the general manager of Kaltura Europe. I'm responsible for all of our business throughout the Kaltura organization, focused around Europe, Middle East, and Africa. A little bit about Kaltura. We are a video platform company, unique in the way that we are open source, so very much like the Red Hat for video. And we divide our go-to-market into 3 major markets, which is higher education, enterprises, as well as media and entertainment. And most of the reason we divide our market perspective into that is that each one of those major markets are at different stages of video adoption, but each market can serve one another from an innovation perspective. Today I'll be here giving a perspective in terms of true ROI from some of the customers that we work with on how they've leveraged Video Portal or Corporate Tube to drive forward their initiatives within and both internally and externally at their organization. And I'm also unique because each one of the people on these panels is a partner of Kaltura's. So I'm happy that everyone's here collaborating on this subject.
Thanks, Ross. That's a great position to be in. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Harish, Vice President Products at MixMove. MixMove is a solution provider company that gives a white-labeled, customizable online video editing platform that can be used to create products and services around it, both in the cloud and on-premise. We have customers in the OBP, OEM, enterprise, education, media agency, and website groups around the world. We are based in France with offices in the US and Japan. I'm glad to be here at Streaming Forum to learn, interact, and discuss with all of you. And we also will be, I guess, adding value here with our experience in using video editing as a solution to increase engagement in a corporate tube scenario. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. And if one of you could actually kill the projector. So to start with, I'm going to ask a question around the name of the session, how to leverage corporate tubes for maximum ROI. And we spoke a bit about this on a call that we had prior to the session, but it used to be that we referred to this as YouTube for the enterprise, but we seem no longer to be doing that. Is there a particular reason that we've sort of gotten away from that name? For that designation. I'm going to open that to any of you.
Oh, I'll start. I think that YouTube for the enterprise is a good and descriptive name, but it really is dependent on who you're talking to within an organization and enterprise. For example, it could seem overly basic to a very sophisticated IT organization, but it could end up with a I got it moment with a marketing organization. But in the end, I think that in many cases you have evolved, and many organizations have evolved beyond YouTube for the enterprise, which is that they really look to leverage a video portal within their organization and integrate it with other applications, making it as easy to use in many ways, shapes or forms, like the consumer-grade applications that they see, but also having the hardened security integration with their social business applications like SharePoint, IBM Connections. So I think that's where you've started to see more and more the movement away from the association with a consumer brand.
Interesting.
So can I build on it and I suppose challenge it slightly?
Sure.
We had a conversation outside, and it's all too easy to imagine that everybody knows everything that you talk about. I write a lot, and my mum reads it and says, I have no idea what you are actually kind of trying to say. It's a different language. So I think it's easy to refer to the things that as consumers we kind of know day in, day out, because we can make that immediate jump. If I say I work for Atos, on the whole people might say, I don't know Atos. I naturally jump to, it's the Olympics. We do the technology at the Olympics. They've heard of that. When we started using Jive as part of the Zero Email piece, I said it's like Facebook because people know Facebook. When we bought Blue Kiwi, French startup, I said it's like Jive. So it's that natural thing. And I still time and time again, we'll go to actually video, Kaltura. What's that then? Well, it's like YouTube, but in the enterprise. Because it's the thing that people still recognise. I get the point in terms of it immediately increases security concerns. For example, if you're talking to that kind of particular person. So you have to get the balance right, but I think in terms of creating that immediate identity, it helps, but you just need to kind of understand how you use the language to move it in the direction that you need.
And we'll come back to the balance question in a minute, but let me ask a follow-on question to this. Thinking less about the name and more about the way that employees behave with these enterprise video portals. So are they approaching an enterprise video portal or a corporate tube if they're a content generator, say, or somebody who's trimming or editing content that's going to go up there differently than the way that they approach the consumer-grade products like a YouTube? So at home, you may have somebody who does quilting, and they decide to upload a video of the quilting that they're doing, and it's sort of very easy for them to do that. Is it from a functionality standpoint easier or harder for them to use a corporate tube, or is it just a sort of a mind block that one is work and one is consumer? And again, open that up to any of you.
Yeah, I'll probably just add a little bit here. One is true. There is certainly the difference between home and work, because when we talk about the corporate YouTube, maybe I shouldn't say YouTube anymore, the corporate tube, that this is within the walls of the enterprise, and I need to be logged into my enterprise portal to be able to use it. So there is certainly the control on what content is available for the customers to edit or use, or let's say upload from an archive. And again, secondly, there might be a question of approval. Well, I've done this, I've created this, will my manager or will my division allow me to publish this on the portal? So these two things are certainly of importance to the enterprise. Secondly, there is the question of being able to do this as well. A lot of employees earlier, I'll take an example of customers that use our solution together with platforms like Kaltura. They have the portal, and then they have the question of, well, I have some video and then it's back at my home on my laptop. Now, if I have a solution that allows me online without leaving the portal to connect, upload, make, trim and stitch together and publish it, that makes a lot of difference. It increases engagement.
Okay.
Perhaps we just throw it over to the audience just to get the play on what is
Precisely.
YouTube and CorpTube. Who has a company YouTube? You just want to raise your hands. And who has a company corporate tube? And when you came to this specific breakout session, was it the fact that it was a corporate tube? Would you have come if it had been called a YouTube? Big silence.
And to add to that, let me ask a secondary question. Those of you who raised your hands and said that you have YouTube, is it that you have a YouTube channel that your company uses for external communication, or is it that you have a YouTube-like internal communication tool? The two of you raised your hand.
We have a YouTube channel.
So you have a YouTube channel that's used for both external communications and for internal communications?
Only for external.
Only for external, okay.
So, I mean, for both. Yeah. So I think, there may be exceptions, but I think that's where the line is. If you answer the first question, it's kind of in and out, both in multiple senses. YouTube is seen as outside of the company. Corporate tube is clearly in for the various reasons. It's got corporate governance, it's seen as serious. But you're right, marketing, who are the people who generally look after the YouTube channel, understand YouTube channel and the usage of it. But that in and outness is also with regards to the perceived element that you talked upon. YouTube is out and therefore is not something that we want in the company. Not necessarily for any specific reason. You could have a corporate tube which is visible externally, but it's kind of a duplication to your YouTube piece. But if I just tie it back with a bit of an example linked to the ROI, I was speaking to a company called Alliance, the insurance company, and they've got a big project on which is around digital working. So they're trying to change the way the whole company works, and there's a whole process of thinking that through in accompaniment with Accenture, which Kaltura and Russ knows well. But in that digital workings, we sat down in the meeting to describe it. The description of the need was exactly from YouTube. The guy was there, he had his helmet, and he said, well, if I want to fix my bike, I don't read a document, I don't go and call a helpline, I go onto YouTube and I will search until I find a video that explains what I need to change in my bike. And so that's his out. And then he turned around into his company and say, right, I need to transform my helpline. I've got to make sure that my helpline that supports my user base of my clients within Alliance understands what they're going to answer to changing technologies. I want them to search, find a video clip, and therefore be able to explain quicker, sooner, the response that's needed. I don't want to be sending out written text. So there's kind of a change which is going on, which is driven by video globally. It's how to work with video, but the perceivedness is, well, video is YouTube, and YouTube is out. It's not in, unless you're in with Kaltura.
Well, thanks, Igor. Although there's one item that you just mentioned which actually would tend to disagree with, which is using YouTube and corporate tube, an internal video portal, as a duplication of effort. Many organizations who are seeing a good return on investment when they invest in an internal corporate video portal have editing tools to make it easy, like Mixmove, for users to edit their videos. they're already used to, as employees, to create videos from maybe the consumer side. But the successful organizations are using the videos, making an adoption and awarding the initiative internally, and then using those videos externally. I'll give you an example. So Philips, the huge consumer products and business products company, has tens of thousands of videos internally. They also have 5,000 videos on their YouTube channel. Many of those videos were videos created by the organization, by the employees, for internal purposes, and then have been repurposed for doing external marketing about the products. And it's not only for the simple products, for example, the lighting and how it affects the Sao Paulo neighborhood of Brazil, but it's also the very complicated products, which are their healthcare products. And what they have done is they have repurposed a lot of their content to make it obviously public-facing on their YouTube channel. To give you an idea of scale and scope, Honda, which also has a huge breadth of products, has 500 videos on their YouTube channel. Philips has 5,000. And a lot of that has come from the return on investment of their investment internally to create a video portal to enrich and have their employees create that video content. So I think they go hand in hand versus being a duplication of effort.
So I think the bit that we maybe kind of haven't fully answered in the question is how do you get people to actually create the content? So what is this magic mechanism? Well, fine to have the technology and the ability to share, but what's this kind of mechanism that you get? And I guess our experience over the last few years has been we've tried everything. So we've kind of put it in people's objectives. You have to kind of do this. You get measured on it, through to actually where we ended up, which was talking about the 3 Ps, people, purpose, passion. And that's where things have been strongest, where people find a way of realising their passion in telling their story. Whether that story is, I found a really cool way to fix a server and I'm going to make it available to everyone internally, or I had a conversation the other night and there was a guy that I was feeling horrendously guilty about because the amount of time and effort he was putting in night after night in his own time to create this thing. And I said, I need to find a way of rewarding you somehow. And he said, it's okay, I just love doing this. And it's finding those people across the organisation that you can give them the tools, enable them to do it, but actually release them to create content that others in the organisation find valuable. Don't try and force, don't try and shape people in particular ways, particular directions.
I'd add a 4th P, which is prizes, which is also something. Now, that's not necessarily going to create
Points means prize.
I was going to say, we've got the points
prizes
now as well.
The contests, right? Which is getting people, gamification works when you're looking at incentivizing people to create videos. Darden Restaurants, Olive Garden, which is the huge chain in the United States, had an initiative to get their general managers of each one of their restaurants to create why they're different. How do they push employees to be the best restaurant and chain? And they had a huge contest to give away 4 tickets to the Basketball Association, the Collegiate Final Four. And they had, out of 818 locations, they had 356 video submissions within the first 48 hours, which shows you how sometimes the incentive can get people at least acclimatized to creating the video. Now, what does that do in terms of ongoing creation? We're not sure, but that at least gets them started. So to add to the 3 Ps, you also have 4th P, which is prizes.
And there's a competition now for the 5th P.
Yeah.
I don't have a P to add, but I have a little a point here. Maybe P point is a P, yeah. So in this case, we spoke about engagement and how to enable creation or how to get them to create content. One is certainly the tool and also the ease of use. Because if we talk about employee-generated content, and obviously earlier it was one-to-many, passive viewing. So the moment you tell people that you can do a little more than being a passive viewer, there's an increase in interest. And this, as we all know, comes from the YouTube story. YouTube wouldn't have been such a success if people weren't able to, upload things, make their contribution. So the employees in any enterprise, or most enterprises I'd say, are used to this kind of culture. And in one particular example, and here I would say that it's a case where a very large technology manufacturing enterprise, again, that uses Kaltura for corporate too, when they work with MixMove, there were 3 specific cases, and this is an example of the investment of the enterprise or to make this a success. So they said, A, we want the users to be able to go to the portal and click on edit and create a new content. B, we want them to be able to trim and modify existing videos that they uploaded, so that if they want to, you don't want to have a 30-minute interview all the time, they could reduce it. And C, even more interesting, is the remix concept, where an employee creates some content, he or she authorizes the ability to take this content and create derivative content. So while still maintaining the credits to the original user. So this means in the safe environment of the enterprise internal portal, one can build on content created by others. For example, someone from training using an HR video, or the reverse. Someone from support helping to build a product marketing video, or the reverse. So these cases have been one of enabling and the integration. 2, by marketing. This is also important because if the internal portal or the video content, as you just said, you have to give them the ability and the knowledge that you can, this is available, this is there, go and use it. So that kind of brings, and once there is someone who starts, a little champion here, a little spokesperson there, it just gets and goes on.
Interesting. So let me come back to one part that Russ had mentioned. Russ, you were talking about the 5,000 videos on the external YouTube channel for Philips. And you said the word repurpose. And my background, started in motion picture, did video editing. Repurposing always meant re-editing. Are they just trimming the beginning and the end, putting small clips of a larger internal video out for external use? Or what do you mean by repurposing? Because I think that's important for people who think about internal and the security of internal content, but then suddenly declassifying it and putting it out on the web.
Is that, well, any of this, no matter how innovative an organization is or how many employees are on board or how many videos are being created internally, they all need to go through a vetting process, repurposing, which means removing content that may be proprietary, which is, right, the YouTube channel is public. That information needs to be vetted. Now that may be someone who is responsible for marketing, who can extract that information, and then it gets vetted from an external marketing perspective, or it may need to go through multiple levels, which is the group manager needs to take out any of that information, and through that, using tools, editing tools, clipping tools, they would go through that content and make it publicly ready.
Okay. So there is some part of a recreation process
Correct,
with editing and
yes.
that type of thing. All right, and so the second part of the title talks about ROI and return on investment. And a question, again, open to all the panel. Do we measure return on investment on the ease of the integration of the corporate tube, the ease of use, the number of users, the amount of content that's generated, or some other model? What's the way that we use to measure ROI?
I'll start off on that one. The thing I was just, as we're listening to ourselves speaking, I was thinking, what is the audience making of all of this? And as we're going through all this process, all I could sort of think of was a hell of a lot of investment, primarily time and investment with regards to generating these videos, albeit with new tools to clip them and whatnot. I was thinking, well, what is the return on investment? So we have one, global client that we've, liaised with in the Nordics. And the way that they looked at it from a business perspective was they turned around and said, well, we have loads of video within our network. It's going on worldwide anyway, but we don't know where exactly it is. We don't know whether it's being viewed well. We don't have stats on it. And then so their sort of return on investment was, we want a centralized way to coordinate and have visibility of all this video within the corporate network. Doesn't matter if it's talking about HR training videos or marketing videos or whatever the video content is, but without having to centralize a workload. We want it decentralized so that those people can carry on posting those videos in whatever system they've got, be it on their local intranet for Asia, or be it within their SharePoint file, because that's what they're used to doing. But the idea with an OVP is you can centralize to sort of mutualize your effort, have a better visibility of what's going on, regardless of all this, purpose of what makes it successful in terms of time and how you're going to use video to change the way you work in terms of business. So perhaps before passing it on, I could just ask the audience again. So I asked, who had YouTube, had a corporate tube, who has video within their network in some way, shape or form within their corporate environment? So, a hell of a lot more of you, almost, well, not all of you, but at least 80% of you raised your hands there when we just had a very small selection for YouTube and corporate tube. So you've probably all got it, and if you're a global company, there's probably stuff hosted that you don't even know about. And that's what big companies are, discovering. And there is a cost there that people, can't really measure, but they know it's there. And how they're feeling that cost is people are complaining, generally to IT and network, saying, why can't we watch the video when we want it? Why can't I watch it on my bring your own device anymore? So that kind of level of cost is coming in, but it's more a cost equation can be done on let's simplify the whole process. And then there's gains in business.
And you're simplifying part of the process on the analytics side as well to know.
Absolutely.
So are we
Absolutely.
at the stage, before we go on to the other panelists, are we at the stage where ROI becomes we can measure it as opposed to whether the measurements are good? Because it seems like we're almost having to go through the gathering process before we can have baselines to figure out what a true ROI would emit.
So, within the sort of corporate clients that Intercall speaks to, I think there's an inherent belief that it's the way to go, but there's a natural inertia within those big corporations to take that step. And they find, non-business or non-direct decision-making processes like, hey, it's our 50th anniversary, our 100th anniversary, let's do something special, let's spend some money and create a corporate tube. Then we'll utilize it for the business more moving forwards. So it's more of a parallel decision process.
Okay.
But clearly, there's not that visibility, it's more of a feeling. But having it centralized gives those analytics, which are all important for then deciding what you may need in terms of accelerating the video around your network, which are harder investments to make.
All right.
Probably a number of points, and I'm going to slightly cheekily go back to zero email. And the point there is, that's a combination of things. It's unified comms, it's enterprise social networks, it's video content, it's knowledge management, it's loads of stuff. But actually my point is, why did we do that? We did that because we wanted to attract people to work for us as an organisation now and in the future. Our average age is 35, we were recruiting a lot of digital natives. Why would you come and work the way that we worked? How do we enable people to work the way that they want to? So actually that's not about specific numbers, that's about creating a culture of a great place to work and people wanting to work there because of the way that they're enabled to work.
Let me just stop you real quick there. Is part of the ROI then retention of those employees or appealing to people to come work?
Retention, cost of employment in terms of kind of search and things like that. So there's a number, but it comes down to my point about enabling people to work the way that they want to, rather than forcing people to work the way your organisation happens to have evolved. Yeah. Second point is clearly there is an ROI to make when you consider the whole collaboration piece and actually consistency of messaging. So in large organisations dispersed across geographic distances, knowing what you do and knowing how to talk effectively about what you do is immensely challenging. And again, something we were talking about outside. So again, how do you provide ease of access to that knowledge such that you're not reinventing the wheel? So there is clearly a case to make around productivity and time to find. Case in point, I did a presentation recently. I didn't use video in the particular example, but I posted a note and got responses from South America and Europe providing me video content and PowerPoint content that enabled me to quickly kind of understand what our holistic story was. And the other point, if I kind of look at, I said earlier, this is part of the portfolio and services that we provide to our clients as well. So for me, that's all about speed of business. So it's accelerating the way in which you can operate, which in a very dynamic market where it is all about how do you deliver the products to your consumers as quickly and as personalised as possible, this is a key enabler that enables that to take place. And yet there are measures that we can define around that in terms of the transformation that enables.
Interesting.
I'll give an example, a very specific example of a large healthcare company who basically did their ROI in 4 major categories. Maybe you can use that for your organization. The first was they were looking at a cloud solution using capability that can grow, so externally hosted. So they used lower cost of hardware internally at the organization for equipment. That's one. Second was what they called a blended learning initiative, saying, okay, we've been doing very highly paid structural training and creating these training courses. We're going to actually have employees create them themselves, and looking at costs on that side. Putting the tools of creating these videos in the hands of the employees, so lower studio production cost as well. And then finally on the fourth, which is a natural, which is cost of travel is obviously saving, but they were putting individuals in specific classrooms where you had to sit and take the test, and they were saying, okay, we're gonna let them do that at their desks, and that's the way they ran some of their metrics for an ROI study. Now, it's not good for every organization, but that's their example. And then an unstructured organization looked at it in terms of pace of innovation, which is how fast, let's track a new idea by putting the concepts out in the field, letting people create videos, come up with ideas, and let's see if we take a structured way to do it and an unstructured way to do it, and look at the cost of innovation as also a way to look at this from an ROI perspective, meaning that we can get new product ideas, get them tested, fail, pass, much more rapidly by putting these tools in the employees' hands. That's a different way to look at it.
Yeah, faster time to market.
Yes, exactly.
So
Yeah.
one thing that both Rob and Russ have mentioned or alluded to is sort of that faster, the innovation, that piece. And Harish, before we get to you, because you're going to talk about the tools to sort of edit content down, one of the questions that I have, I came out of video conferencing before I started in streaming about 16 years ago. And in the video conferencing world, we had this whole idea of video messaging that never really took off, because if you made a video, you had to send it across a 56K line, and it took forever to get to somebody. These days, we have apps on iOS and Android like Uvu or Viber or WhatsApp, where you can do little quick video messages, or Snapchat, where you can do a video message and it goes to the people. Now, obviously, Snapchat, the idea is it disappears, but on these others, in a way, it's almost like instead of writing down a note or a quick email, you spit out a video, a short video with an idea. You're not really going to edit it, you're going to put it out there. How do we manage that from a knowledge management standpoint? Because I totally get that we can increase the speed of innovation and time to market, but when it's not in a textual form, it's very hard to go back and find that detail later. So I don't know if anybody has any thoughts on that when you're talking about innovation and sort of the short video bursts and that type of thing.
It's like the tree falls in the forest, right? Yeah. Or video drops in my laptop. Do you want anyone specific?
Yeah, and anybody. I mean, the two of you both sort of alluded to that, so I'm curious from your standpoint if you.
Actually, tools. Oh. Do you want me to go? Go ahead. You go ahead.
It's obviously a very good question.
Yeah.
I mean,
I want to hear what Rob says first.
It's kind of interesting in the sense that before we started, I kind of scribbled down just a few of the platforms, I guess, that we use to share information. And they're just, these are the obvious ones. They're kind of SharePoints, the wikis, the websites, the stuff that people do on the tablets, Twitter, all sorts across the enterprise. And how in the hell do you actually work out who's put what where? So I agree completely with the challenge. I don't have a magic solution for it, which is probably why we both hesitate. I think one of the things that we have done, and this touches on your point around propagating innovation and how do you get knowledge out there. So within the scientific community that I mentioned earlier, how do we make sure that more and more people internally in the organisation and externally across the world, frankly, gain some degree of insight to some of these bits of information. And again, no magic to it. I mean, it is using social media internally and externally across the organisation and a number of channels to at least raise awareness. I think one of the big challenges that if anybody does have an answer, please come and tell me at the end, is everyone consumes information, learns information in different ways. So video is great for a proportion of people, but not everybody wants to watch that. So not only how do you actually understand what is out there, but how do you understand how to link that content when you've got some snippets, video content, some that relates to it in other formats, and how do you bring that together? The final point is, one of my favourite subjects is electracy. Electracy, if people have come across it. Which is, so electracy defined as is to digital media what literacy is to print. And it's kind of that point. It's going back to, you mentioned some tools that are out there.
Right, and consumer tools.
But there's millions. So how do you find a way to kind of keep abreast of that innovation and activity out there, which your employees will be using, whatever kind of rules and policies you may put in place? And find ways of innovating faster, coming to that point. And people who do improve the way that they do that, I don't think anyone's cracking it overnight. If you can improve that, that puts you in a far better position to, again, accelerate time to market in terms of the earlier point.
And it's interesting, what I described, of course, were consumer apps. They're one-to-one communication apps, so you really don't need to keep track of all that information. But to your point about the repurposing of content, if those short snippets become important within the organization, then being able to gather those together and figure out how to.
So I think there's a key audit point, actually, which, again, has always been front of mind in a lot of these tools and techniques and transformational change. There are plenty of organisations I've worked with over the last few years who have been in situations where they needed to be able to prove conversations that took place or didn't take place. And that's the complexity around that whole kind of space of external consumer apps that people are using for that within their workplace, and how you actually kind of keep abreast of what's happening in that space.
And there's relevancy, right, which is, okay, I report to Rob. I'm about to have a meeting with Rob. I'm going to quickly search for a video where he was speaking. Hey, Rob, that global warming statistics, man, those were amazing statistics that you said a couple weeks back at the meeting, right? That could be one area. And then obviously being able to surface information that may be relevant. Indexing video is not easy. Automating the indexing of video is not easy, right? Because you have certain taxonomy and criteria that is industry specific. But it can be of amazing and tremendous value if you use analytics to your advantage, which is creating captions around the video so that they can be searched for certain points in time, automatically knowing who and associating who uploaded the video, who's the most popular, who this person has reporting into them and who they report to, so that you can automatically present within the video portal, here are the videos relevant to you because I report to Rob, so here's Rob's latest videos. Here are the most popular videos within your organization. Here's the most popular videos within your department. These become more relevant to those employees, and if you use the tools appropriately, which you can, you've got a constant innovation circle of people who are learning faster and more efficiently if you use the technology to your advantage.
I think the one thing I'd add into that, I wrote a blog article, I don't know, 2 years ago called The Way We Work, and nothing that I talked about in that article was technologically not available. Maybe. But most of it, the technology was feasible. And the point was searchable everything, so everything's recorded. You just know everything that you need to know at every point in time, whether it's video, voice, documents, everything searchable. Most of it you can do. Culturally, I still find it weird when somebody turns up for an interview and immediately puts down kind of whatever they found about me on the web, as they do. But technologically, you can do a lot.
So Harish, you can comment on that if you like, but then
Yeah,
also
actually,
the ROI piece as well.
Listening to the conversation, 2 points came to my mind. One is an interesting example which we learned regarding ROI from one of our customers in the enterprise. We were trying to understand how this specific question, how did you measure ROI? And what they told us is, we looked at the amount of support calls in certain areas, internally as well as externally, in the first 2 quarters of the year when we did not have video catalogs, video support, and the latter half of the year where they did have video. And they said that they measured a 19% reduction. So 19% reduction to these calls. Now they said that, look, this is money not spent, energy not spent, and time saved. So they said that, well, this is something which we benefited from, and we have numbers to show this. So that was interesting for us. Secondly, you mentioned about culture and this video communication, short video communication, why it didn't take off. Now, there are 2 cases of one-to-one and one-to-many. We've seen that in one-to-one, it's probably easy. And many people, and I've heard this in many discussions with in various countries, some people just don't like themselves being filmed. Some people just don't want to put a video of themselves, however trimmed or modified it is, into the portal. So that is also there, and that's probably part of culture or simple personality. So that's another thing which, whereas if you ask the same person to make a demo or a how-to video with their voice, they'd be more comfortable.
Yeah.
So I think
I think that
it's
highlights
evolving,
It highlights a nuance with regards to video. There's something about it. It's there's an element of the human factor getting in front of the camera, but there's another element which is just linked to people will go back and refer to a video, and it's more powerful. You said that in that video. If it's a mistake or something, you said that in that video. It's harder to hide behind. If it's an email or a text or word, oh, you misunderstood me, or you miscommunicated. So there's that aspect. Is it's seen to be more important in video. The flip side of it, and I think that's the important bit, is the reverse of it. Is when you're getting all that positive communication through to whatever the audience is, video is seen to be more powerful. You go to it, you listen to it, you get bigger messages through in a shorter period of time than you can possibly do in audio or in the written word. So I'm not sure about the Snapchats, or the small quick video part, as I was sort of thinking that through. I think it's more, in the online video space or the corporate tube space, it is more, communication that is thought to go out to many people. If the communication is good, there'll be a hell of a lot of people. If it's not good, it will self-orientate itself. So there are those search tools that can be put in place. A lot of them are, they're not fully automated, so they're sort of meta tags that are put through, but they do work. If you're working in a good way, then you can organize your communication into channels, so there's themes, as Russ talked about. But invariably, what comes to the front is what people like. So there's an element of buzzness to it. The successful videos will be seen more, and then it creates a buzz. And they're successful because they achieve, either because they're fun, or because they achieve an aim in the business environment. And that aim, for example, is reducing time on your helpline calls. I mean, that is a clear return on investment. Let's take it back to the R&I. How does a company do that? Because there's loads of different departments that are involved. So it is very much a sort of a senior decision to go with video seriously within a corporate environment.
Very good. Now, normally I leave about 10 minutes for question and answer, but we've seemed to run a bit long, which is good because the conversation has been very helpful. But does anyone have a question in the audience? Let me rephrase that. What haven't we answered for you today?
Or has anyone got a 5th P?
That's right. That's right. That's a fair point. Fair point. So I'm going to ask one last question of the panel, and I think Rob, you mentioned the balance. What's more important, security of content or convenience of access, especially when you're talking about employees who may be mobile or outside the corporate firewall? And I'll again open that up to all of you.
Shall I kick off?
Absolutely. Again,
it's kind of one of those fantastic questions that there isn't an easy answer for. over the last 5 years, some of the things that we've been able to do have been because I can tread a fine line between marketing within a global business and what the business lines want to achieve, because of things that we've done. And to give some insight to that, many years ago when I introduced blogging within the organisation, there was a lot of pushback in terms of you can't possibly give people the right to talk about whatever they want to talk about with the public. Rightly so. I mean, it was nervousness, and that's not a unique nervousness in an organisation like ourselves. And then when we use social media, there's that question mark. And then when we use video, there's that question mark. So I think you just got to recognise that there are a degree of controls that you have to have within the organisation that give, whether it's marketing and brand, or whether it's the CSO, or whichever those people are, they've got enough comfort. But you can't let it dampen people's passion, to go back to the 3 Ps, I apologise, the passion and desire to actually kind of share content. And I think we've always had a degree of moderation around anything that we produce. And I've had people very strongly argue against that. But to be clear, moderation is just to ensure, it's not editing, it's not changing, it's does this impact brand value, is the question. And I still stand by that. For us, we need to kind of tread that fine line, because that's the way that we make sure that we get the business and all those kind of various people across that business on board. And we have had to stop certain things being published internally, because if you publish it internally, there is the risk that it gets externally. And then you have to balance people's contribution and passion in terms of what do you mean I can't do that? So I don't have a magic answer, but for us, it's always been that fine line: be trusted by the business, be trusted by marketing, be trusted by those with the security responsibility. Earn that trust and maintain that trust through the controls that you put. Albeit, please put light controls in rather than over the top.
No, I would definitely agree. I think that the companies who are pushing the boundary of innovation using video, especially through a video portal, also push the sense of responsibility and understanding out to its end users to know, look, there is a lot of tools in your hands that can be very powerful, but it also could hurt the organization if any of this information gets out in the open. And you just have to know you have a sense of responsibility to really use that wisely. And that's very, very key. And that always needs to be communicated. And that could be through pop-ups and information, just as reminders as someone uploads a video. But the second area, which is much more of a process one, is that many successful organizations also are indexing their content in a very simple fashion with 3 tiers, right? The very secure stuff is very hard to get to. The proprietary is being enabled, but people get a sense of warning, and then the public information can be pushed out. But it's also important to implement that type of framework as well when you're putting these tools into end users' hands. So that's kind of a best practice.
Igor, Harish?
Yes, actually this is a very relevant question. I mean, security versus convenience, we get into this a lot of the times, because the moment you say edit, then obviously there's marketing, there's the grade of the content, what's available, etc. There are certain companies that say, well, we only want our employees to be able to use existing content in the library and not be able to add content. So we just provide that possibility. You just take away the add media functionality. And a lot of time there's also a request to have an intro and outro and a watermark automatically added to this, because even when it's internal communication, they just want to be ensure that, well, this is all always protected. And the last thing, of course, going to this extremely high level of security, something again comes to mind, because sometimes we've had discussion like, we have to have DRM, and it's really important. And once there was the case of, well, we need DRM because we have this extremely sensitive content and we have to protect it. Then the question was, well, if it is so sensitive, then you shouldn't be, first of all, letting anyone edit it, So there's this this tug of war every time. But the truth is, despite all this, tools like some of the solutions that we all provide are increasingly used, and it's not an overnight change. But even IT is now, for example, when you say that you can put everything on premise, that's already half the battle won, because they know the data doesn't leave their network. So there are things like that, and I see the difficulty reducing as we move ahead.
Igor, the final word.
So it is a particularly difficult one. It's a one that at Intercall we've been confronted with corporate clients for a long time, because we're doing live communication, and invariably security comes up, and a lot of what we do is internal corporate communication. But there's a sort of a nuance of reasonableness. So you can have sort of levels of security that you can patch in. So we often have the green, orange and red levels of passwords and so on and so forth. But there has to be a sort of a stage where someone puts a line down and says, okay, we'll accept an element of risk, because there always will be some. There's nothing stopping someone watching over someone's shoulder within a corporate environment, even if the solution is on-prem. And there are extreme case scenarios. I can think of a car manufacturer in France, internal communication through to the top 100 managers. They run their meetings in a meeting room with no windows to stop competitors putting lasers on the windows and getting the vibes and listening to what they're saying. And when I heard that for the first time, I couldn't believe it. I know Tim knows those kind of scenarios.
Exactly.
But as soon as you know that there's that level of paranoia or spying going on from an industrial level, you know that it's taken seriously. But ultimately, it's the same as was just said there. If it's that important, it's not something you're going to be editing. If it's that important, it's not something you're going to have on your corporate tube anyway. But you have to just put the levels of security that are available and react to any slippages if there are any, which is edit off the bad bit or delete it.
Very good. So I'd like to ask the audience to join me in thanking the panelists for their time today.